may not be long. I've got a little problem with the old voice tonight. I was on the phone a few minutes ago. Had a phone call on the way in from a father of a fellow that was just discovered deceased this afternoon. I had to go on a call this afternoon, a 42-year-old. And it's a sad time to have to talk to some parents. I had to talk to a 69-year-old dad Friday night where his 43-year-old son had just taken his life.
Yeah.
Sad deal, of course, this guy.
Joe, about how many is that you reckon since you're deputy coroner and y'all rotate? How many suicides? You were telling me.
I worked 12 last year.
12 suicides.
So this already had 2 this month. And it's just a sad deal. And of course, the dad of the one Friday night was a saved man. In fact, he said he was doing some evangelistic work. And I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "I'm just making sure people know about Jesus."
Amen.
You can't beat that. Well, he and I talked quite a while Friday night, but the Watkins family, y'all pray for them. It's a hard time on a wife and some sons and parents and what have you, but you need to pray for the Watkins family. Well, tonight we're going to be talking about a couple of fellows. We're going to talk about Elisha and Elijah. Boy, those guys are interesting, aren't they? Man, they did not have a boring life. We're going to be talking about them a little bit, and I don't really do titles usually, but, you know, I guess I could say, let's open our eyes. And I mean, tonight we want to look at some things where you don't normally see them. One thing I like to do, if you give me a photograph, and it's a vacation, and you're standing up and showing me, I normally don't want to look at you. I look at all the stuff around. It's just interesting to see what's in the background. I like seeing all those kind of, Marie gets wore out with me watching TV and movies. You know, I said, "Do you see that wagon? You know, they got that little hole under there where the guy lays down and drives, and the guy on top of the seat's not really one driving." So I see all the other stuff, and maybe that's why I see this today a little bit. But in 1 Kings, we're going to be talking about Elijah first. We'll dip on Elisha just a minute or two. I read a little bit of the one about Elisha in 2 Kings back a while back when we talked about that. But Elijah was having some situations when he was either pretty brave and sometimes he was a little on the chicken side. I'm glad God shows us in all these great men of the Bible. I mean, look at Moses. It shows us that we mess up, but them guys messed up too. So they weren't always on their A game. You know, they had some situations. But Elijah's here in chapter 17, and it says, "And Elijah the Tishbite, who was an inhabitant of Gilead, said unto Ahab, As the Lord God of Israel liveth, before whom I stand, there shall not be dew nor rain these years, but according to my word." Now that's a pretty big phrase to tell a king that can take your head off. So what was going to happen then? And it says, "And the Lord came unto him, saying, Get thee hence, and turn thee eastward, and hide thyself by the brook Cherith that is before Jordan." Sometimes God will just take care of everything. I mean, he'll just like stand up. I mean, he stood before all these prophets and dealt with them. But here, God's telling him to get in a hurry. Hence means right now. He says, "Get with it, boy, and go hide thyself." That just don't sound like. I think God sometimes don't want us to rear back and say, "I'll handle the devil with a switch." You know, I think sometimes He wants us to just listen to Him. "And it shall be that thou shalt drink of the brook, and I have commanded the ravens to feed thee there." So he went and did according to the word of the Lord, for he went and dwelt by the brook Cherith that was before Jordan, and the ravens brought him bread and flesh in the morning, bread and flesh in the evening, and he drank of the brook. Now, I believe that's a miracle. Now, let's look at the unseen stuff. We talk about the ravens. The ravens aren't a bird that shares a good meal. Now, they'll take care of their young. But have you ever seen a bunch of crows? They are fighting over that roadkill.
Yes, sir.
They're not wanting to take care of anything. But he says he brought him bread. Now, where'd they get a bread? Have you ever seen a raven or a crow with an apron around it, fixing to knead up a little dough? No. Where did he get the bread? I believe, you know, the Lord works things like a sewing machine. You ever watch a sewing machine's parts work? Everything is in unison. I think he had this little lady somewhere that kept baking her bread and putting it on her windowsill, and the raven picked it up, and the next day she said, it happened again. It happened again. Now it's going twice a day. But the raven's bringing him bread. And it says he brought flesh. Now, what do we think about when a raven's going to bring some flesh? He went and got some roadkill. I don't think God let him bring to Elijah roadkill. I think it was fried chicken that he picked up on that same windowsill. But he brought it twice a day. Now, tell me, is that a miracle?
Yeah. Amen.
Is that not a miracle?
Yeah.
Don't we love miracles?
Yeah.
We love miracles. I looked up what miracle means, and it says it's an extraordinary event. It just don't happen every day. Now, see, that's what the problem is sometimes. Our eyes has been opened, we think, to look at this about the bread and flesh in the morning, the bread and flesh in the evening. But what else did he say? But he drank of the brook. We just sort of skip over that. The brook's just running by, water. We could sit there all day and just watch the water run. There's nothing different about this water than we saw 30 minutes ago. It's the same old boring stuff. It's running right on by. But you know, I had to go to military schools on survival, and I had to teach these classes. They tried to kill me in Minnesota by sleeping in the snow for 2 weeks. They said, you're in a national park, you can't kill anything, but find you something to eat if you can. Make you a snow shelter. Here's your sleeping bag. Oh, we do have some of this freeze-dried stuff. Maybe you can boil some snow and maybe you can make it seem like soup or something. Well, this old Georgia boy brought 2 things in his coveralls. A piece of lighter knot. Them Yankee boys had never knew what lighter knot was. I could start a fire. They said, where'd you get that? I said, y'all go ahead and use them bark off the tree, but I got some lighter knots. And I had a butterfinger. I'm sorry, I cheated. Of course, that don't last a long time. But one thing we were taught in these schools is to try to find out how to trap. I trapped some things and showed it in classes, how to survive. And what they taught us, they said a person usually, under certain circumstances, can live 3 weeks without food. Well, we know that a lot of people, we see in a case in here in a few minutes, where Elijah went 40 days on those 2 meals that the angel gave. So we know people can fast, but do completely without it. But now, how long can you live without water? Well, the standard thing they teach is 3 to 4 days. Now, that can go or come one way or the other. According to Big Yard, some of the people carry a lot of water. I'm not going to say what kind of people carry a lot of water, but they aren't the skinny folks. You can carry more water, and you can tend to go a little longer. Your metabolism. Somebody a little bit late, like Brother Mars, could go longer because his metabolism is water than the preacher can. He's going to evaporate and running around so much, moving around so much. Your metabolism makes a difference. But bottom line is, it's going to be a couple of days. So which one was the most important here? The mundane, which was the water that goes by and we watch it. We say, that don't look no different than the water I saw 30 minutes ago. There comes some more. Well, it looks just like that water. It's just mundane. What's the description of mundane? Boring, uninteresting, lacks excitement, commonplace. But which one was needed the most? My message to you is today, sometimes I've known some people, they're just not going to be happy unless they can see a miracle every now and then. It's a miracle every now and then. some of these faces I see tonight, I'm not going to say y'all are mundane, but y'all are commonplace because I see you here all the time. Now, if I'm trying to think of a name I could use, but Billy Sunday walked in.
Yeah.
Why, we would think, this is a miracle. Well, it would be. It would be. But if it was during his time, but sometimes I want to see those regular faces.
Yes, that's good. That's good.
This guy I used to go to church with, didn't see him doing much. I thought, can't seem to get him interested in going to visitation or doing this, that, or the other. Found out later, though, that he and his wife were visiting different people every week. Maybe it just we needed some encouragement.
Yeah.
There was no flash, no big miracle. It was what it took.
Yeah.
And I see here where I think God is showing us something with those two things there. These ravens, it was great. Now, it goes on and says the ravens quit bringing the food so they could leave. No, he didn't say that. This is what it says. It said, ravens brought him bread flesh in the morning, bread flesh in the evening, and drank the brook. And it came to pass after a while that the brook dried up, because there had been no rain in the land. And the Lord came unto him and said, get thee to Zarephath. Of course, that becomes a whole other miracle. And we get all carried away about this woman that took care of his needs. And that's great. It happened, but I think sometimes we need to look at the regular stuff and be appreciative of what God's got for us. On and on and on.
Yeah.
I've been healed! Well, that's great, but God's kept me well.
Amen.
We
Amen.
forget about that. We forget about He's kept us well.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a place, nothing wrong with that miracle of being healed was something that didn't look possible. But I need to be thankful, Lord. Thank you that I haven't been sick.
Yes, sir.
And I'm making it through. But there's challenges out there that's not going to take necessarily the miracle for us to get through. It's going to be that slow momentum that we got. Well, where did I get to here? Well, we're just going to skip around some stuff. We see the challenge that he gave to Baal's prophets over in 18. Man, I love this miracle here. I like it where it says it licked up the water. I mean, it just took the whole thing. God can do that. We've seen some things like that. I've seen some things in my life that.
Amen.
But you know what sticks in my mind though is the steadfastness that God's got. Let's see. I think I put something in Lamentations chapter 3.
Yeah.
Y'all know where I'm going with this.
Yeah.
Verse 21, this I recall to my mind, therefore have I hope. Now, most time we read the next two verses. And this one here, sometimes it seems like most people that read this skip that first verse that I read. This I recall. This I recall. I think about, and I didn't plan this verse, it just popped in my head about this time, when Paul stood being questioned, King Agrippa. You all know the story. There's a thing in there where he says, they said, you can speak for yourself. He said, I think myself happy that I can speak for myself. You know what I got out of that one day? Some people think he's just saying that I'm glad I can speak. We need to sometimes think ourselves happy. How do you do that? You remember, you recall, like it says to my mind. You remember what it is that God's done for you. I recall to my mind, therefore have I hope. It is of the Lord's mercies that we are not consumed, because His compassions fail not. They are new every morning. Great is thy faithfulness. I think about that brook, that faithfulness that kept coming. Now, there was a time when the brook stopped, but that was for a purpose. That was for a purpose. But I think about those compassions. It is a miracle that we're not consumed. I mean, preacher says it all the time. It's a wonder God just don't swat us sometimes. It's just a mercy. I've heard it said by, I can't remember what preacher I heard say it one time, but any move of God toward us is a mercy. Then you think,
Yeah,
what if He's chastising us? That's the straightness out. That's the, I think it's Coondog called it, when your daughter sometimes, he said, she's fixing to tune them up. So sometimes we need tuning up a little bit. But all that happened. But let's jump on to another thing. See again, I mean, I'm trying to prove this point, to open our eyes. It don't have to be the big things in life that ought to draw us close to God. It don't have to be the big miracles. I mean, sometimes we lose sight of what's important. We think, things have just got to be there. It's got to be seen. I was hoping Byron was going to be here. I was going to tell it on him, but I can't tell it on him unless he's here because he won't get the good out of it. But there's a story about some guys that applied for a job at a power company, and they said, well, we've got too many applicants. What are we going to do? We're going to set you on 2 teams. And the team that can set the most polls is the one that's going to get the job. So they take off, and they come back at the end of the day, and they said, that's the first team, said, how'd y'all do? We got 5 polls set. They said, that's pretty good. Just y'all's little crew. Everything's done by hand back then. How about you guys? They said, well, we only did 1. But them guys left most of theirs sticking out of the ground. Sometimes you got to go deep. It's not just what you see, it's what's in the ground that counts. So, anyway, the boys that done the 1 is the one that got the job, as it turned out. If I was going to make this story up, that's what I would tell it. Chapter 19. Let's jump over to chapter 19. There's another proof about what I'm talking about here. And there again, this is just a bunch of verses proving to you that we need to open our eyes and see what's deep, not just the flash. The flash sometimes is what we want. And nothing wrong with a miracle. I mean, they're great. God used them. He used Elisha and Elijah both. I mean, think about the things they did. I mean, an axe head swimming. That's pretty cool, isn't it? I mean, I've lost some things in water before, but see an axe head swimming. These old boys at golf would probably like to see a golf ball swim sometimes, so they would loosen it. It don't work. But chapter 19, it talks about Elijah being there, and it says in verse 11, and he said, go forth and stand upon the mount before the Lord. And behold, the Lord passed by, and a great strong wind rent the mountains and break the pieces of rocks before the Lord. And that's a pretty big deal. God can put that in. I mean, God is in charge of the wind. He's in charge of everything. You know what? To me, I didn't plan on saying this anyway, but there's a miracle to me when God calms the sea, when the disciples were afraid they were going to lose their lives in the ship.
Yeah.
And it said when Jesus came up, it said he spoke, and there was a great calm, it said.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not from Florida. I don't know the ocean like the preacher and nobody else. But what I do know is after a storm passes by, there's not a calm for a couple of days. There's a tumult for a while.
Yeah.
But Jesus calmed the wind, and it says, and there was a great calm. So, I mean, think about it. That's a miracle in itself. But here, God is going to speak to Elijah out of this great wind. No, it says right there, but the Lord was not in the wind. After the wind, an earthquake. Man, that gets your attention, wouldn't it? I mean, think about it. Earthquake's a scary thing. I mean, we see some people, we saw some Israelites that just fell in the hole when it opened up and swallowed them. Them and their whole households. That was a pretty big hole. But it says the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, a fire. But the Lord was not in the fire. After the fire, a still, small voice.
Yeah.
No flash there. Well, there was some, but it's like Elijah said, whoa, come back, wind. Are you not going to speak to me? And we're that way sometimes. It's sometimes those small things some of the places that we get some instruction, encouragement from, are not where we think it would come from.
Amen. That's
We're
true.
looking in the wrong places sometimes for the answers. I understand that the person that came up with the idea and invention for a chainsaw, which was a pretty miraculous thing in itself. I mean, you heard about the guy that was a pup warder in the old days, and they came out with a chainsaw and went to the store. The guy says, if you'll buy one of these, I guarantee you, you'll triple your production right away. So he said, I'll buy one. So he can't come back the next day. He says, you have this piece of junk. I'm going back to my old ways. He said, why? He said, I can't cut nothing with that thing. He said, let me see, is something wrong with it? He choked it, cranked it, and it started making it running. And the old guy said, what's that? He'd been sawing with a chainsaw. So, we need sometimes to hear something from somebody. What I was going to say about the chainsaw, the person that came up with the idea was a lady that had never saw one. She just said somebody one day to her husband, you know, it'd be great if you had something other that would just go around, and cut it. And he's going, Anyway, it went from there. The chainsaws are sort of big to me, but I think, you know, I made a statement about trucks and chainsaws one time. Todd had a guy to work on my truck or something. It had to be done to it that he wasn't going to do, but we called and said it's ready. This was 10 o'clock at night. And I told her, I said, let's go get it. She said, now? I said, you got to get that truck back in my yard. A man ain't no kind of man without a truck. And a chainsaw. Just the way some of us rednecks look at it. CW was here, called me one day, said, hey, can I borrow your chainsaw? What do you need done? I'll come do it. I said, you don't ask a southern boy to borrow his chainsaw. I said, okay. Calls me another time and says, hey, can I borrow your truck? And I said, let me go ahead and explain this thing all the way. Chainsaws and trucks and wives, you don't borrow. So, I don't know if he ever caught on or not, you know. He was not from here. Sometimes it makes a difference. But anyway, where did I get to? Still small voice. Still small voice. Verse 10. I think maybe he was feeling a little bit all alone. He said, I've been very jealous for the Lord of hosts, for the children of Israel have forsaken the covenant, thrown down thine altars, and slain thy prophets with the sword. And I, even I, only am left, and they seek my life to take it away. I think God had to show him he's got the earthquake, he's got the wind, he's got the fire, but he don't need it. He don't need it. Going to go on for there a little bit. Let's jump over to Elisha. Where's that clock at? 2 Kings chapter. What did I write down where I was going to? Chapter 2 is where I was at. Well, I think I was going to stop off here. Here's a pretty big miracle when Elisha got to see Elijah leave. I mean, he took a airplane drive, he took a plain air drive. I mean, he went up. That's a pretty big deal. Now, Elisha turned around and he says, let me try something other he's tried before. And of course, he tried to part the water and that worked just fine. So he started off, he said, let me see. Now, there's some miracles happen there, but Elisha had some things that wasn't necessarily miracles he's going to end up dealing with. Chapter 6. Well, around about verse 8, I'm not going to read all these verses, but king of Syria, which is old Ben-Hadad, he caused some problems to Elijah too. He caused some problems to a lot of people. He was just hard king to deal with, but he kept making these battle plans. These battle plans. And they kept getting foiled because God told Elisha what was going to happen. Elisha went and told the king of Israel, hey, the Syrian king's fixing to do this. He said, all right, well, let's just go somewhere else. I mean, it'd be nice if we could always run from our problems like it. We can't always do that. I heard it said, if I knew where I was going to die, I just would never go there. But, we just don't know. Aren't you glad you don't know where or when you're going to die? Think about it. I think about old King Hezekiah a lot.
Yeah.
God said to the prophet, said, go tell him you're fixing to die. Elijah turns to the wall and prays to the Lord. The Lord says to the prophet, go back and tell him I'm going to add to him 15 more years. Now that's a blessing. I think about this a lot. But he knew from right then, 15 years is going to be the day. He's clicking them off. Oh, I've got 6 years, 2 months, 3 days left. And we'd be fretting about that. But anyway, why don't I jump on that? Anyway, knowing things. The king of Syria was warned. And he says, will you not, last part of verse 11, will you not show me which of us is for the king of Israel? In other words, who's the spy here? And one of the servants said, none, my lord, O king, but Elisha the prophet that is in Israel, telleth the king of Israel the words that thou speakest in thy bedchamber. And he said, go and spy where he is, that I may send and fetch him. And it was told him, saying, behold, he is in Dothan. Now, why would he be in Alabama? Isn't it funny how we name certain places out of the Bible? And we got Mars Hill right down the road, and Athens. Old Paul was there. If I had a place, some of these people just don't know the Bible. I would not name where I live Mars Hill if somebody had an altar that says to the unknown God down. And think about the churches in Revelation. Who's going to name this church that? But people do it. I guess it just sounds like a name. Of course, here I am talking about this, and I got the dumbest name in the world. I had one grandpa named Benjamin and one Joseph, and here I get the name Benny Joe. That sounds like some boy's going to wear short pants all his life. Anyway, I get off subject sometimes. Sorry about that. But anyway, he says, go get him. Bring him here. Therefore sent he here the horses and chariots and a great host, and they came by night and compassed the city about. When the servant of the man of God was risen early and gone forth, behold, an host compassed the city, both with horses and chariots. And his servant said unto him, alas, my master, how shall we do? Now, I don't know if you thought about what the word compassed means, but this is a city. This is enough soldiers to completely circle the whole city. That's no easy task to put an army like that big together. But I love Bible terms. That's why I like King James. There's a guy from another church been wanting to do the jail ministry at Barrow County Jail. So the guy that's in charge of the jail down there told him he had to come go with me first. So the guy, I keep shaking him loose now. He goes with me all the time. Now he's pretty straight. He's from a Christian church, but I pretty much put the hot light on him on a bunch of stuff, what he believes. Now he don't use a King James. I said, if you're going to work with me, you're going to use a King James. Now, if you get your own time frame and the administrator lets you have your own time frame, obviously you can do what you want to. But here's what we're going to do. He said, no problem. He's no problem. He's a pretty unusual guy. He sort of reminds me of Bob Newhart in his ways. But anyway, last Sunday we were going back, and he acts still pretty shy, and he's sort of walking along, with me. And he said, and now he's a seminary graduate or something. In fact, I know some guys that go to church with, my cousin goes to church with him, they all talk about how smart he is. And I thought, well, he's still going to listen to me until he gets where he needs to be. But we was going back the other day, and he said, hey, Joe, said, I was going through a bunch of my stuff in seminary, and I was looking at a lot of my notes on stuff. He said, you know, I use the King James all the way through. He said, Joe, be proud of it. I said, you did run well.
Amen.
What's hindering you now? I mean, come on. So I haven't cut him any slack. But anyway, I liked how I got off again on something else. Which is unusual that I've been able to find my way back from the rabbit trail. But I just love how it says, this guy says, this young guy says, how shall we do? How shall we do? And of course, we would have been saying other ways. I mean, he was basically scared. He said, Elisha, I mean, I know you've done some miracles. I mean, come on now. They're pretty nervous. And verse 16 says, and he answered, fear not, for they that be with us are more than they that be with them. And Elisha prayed and said, Lord, I pray thee, open his eyes. And that was where I got my title. That he may see. And the Lord opened the eyes of the young man. And he saw, and behold, the mountains were full of horses, and chariots of fire round about Elisha. Now, I think the distance all around the mountains is a greater area than just around the city. I talked about that a minute ago, how many people that soldiers are that taken to pass. But here we're talking about all through the mountains. They got these chariots of fire. Now, is that what he needed to have his eyes open to? Maybe, but that's not what I see. I'm thinking, like Elisha said, Lord, let him see that, but I want him to see something else. God didn't even use chariots of fire. Think about that. It was a miracle that they weren't even there for him to see. Chariots of fire. And yet, you just expect them just to come down and be taking heads off and just, I mean, make for a great movie. In fact, if Hollywood writes about this, that'll be what will happen. They won't tell it like it is. And Elisha just says, Lord, we're just making folks blind. I mean, honestly, the wind could have done that with sand in their eyes and not be able to see. No miracle there, just some wind that blinded them. But man, the chariots, that would have been something different. Open my eyes, Lord, that I can see that you don't have to use the chariots. You could use whatever that they're blind. Now we can chop their heads off. Elisha says, hey, y'all, come on with me. I'll show you where you need to go. Y'all to the wrong place. Y'all have rang the wrong doorbell. Let me go show you the man you're looking for. Come with me. Gets to Samaria, which was the capital at that time. And brought him in and said, Lord, open their eyes. Oh, man, we are messed up. And, of course, the king of Israel says, he asked him twice. He said, can we chop their heads off? Can we kill them? He said, no, feed them. Feed them. And it says, let me see, I think there's some particulars here. He said, thou shalt not smite them, thou wilt smite them whom thou had taken captive with the sword and with the bow. Set bread and water before them, that they may eat and drink and go to their master. And he prepared great provision for them. And when they had eaten and drunk, he sent them away. Now, there's a message that we could spring off here and go with, but we're not going to tonight. Because he made a great provision of food and drink for the Syrians. Now, just a couple of chapters after then, there was a famine. So that there was no food, no water in Samaria. Y'all remember the story about that? Two old boys that says, we starving to death anyway. They won't have nothing to do with us. They hate us. Let's just go to them. If they'll give us something to eat. If they kill us, we just going to die. And they go out there, and the tents were empty except for the food. There was no soldiers there. They had left. And they said, well, let's get us a bunch of stuff and let's go hide it. And they said, we got to tell the city about it. Now, we went from them providing the people that was fighting them again the food, and they were doing without. Now, God sometimes has to get our attention to see the small stuff again. Because once again, they didn't go out there and beat up on the Syrians to get their food and take it away from them. Sometimes that's important. You got to know where your resources are. There's a little man, Billy Driscoll's brother-in-law, who it is. Charlie Krause was his name, interesting old fella. I always called him Caleb, because he was a little small man in his 80s, hunting with me, just full of fire. I'd say, we'd go scout, and I said, Charlie, let's take a break. You need a break. He said, I'm fine. If you need to take a break, you go ahead. He was always, you know, like Caleb, give me a mountain to climb and a giant to fight. He was always wide open. Now, why did I bring Charlie up? I did chase a rabbit there and lost him. I hate that when it happens.
Hey, I do too.
My typewriter, it may come back in a minute. Oh, I know. Here it is. Y2K, Charlie said. Charlie calls me on the phone. Brother Joe, you know Y2K is coming right up. He said, you should see my basement. I said, what's in your basement? I have got this much freeze-dried food here. You know, the computers are going to do this. We're not going to have food. We can't go to the grocery store. He said, how much food have you set back? I said, not a morsel. He said, what? I expected better out of you. He said, what are you doing? I said, I've been putting back bullets. He said, for what? I said, I got bullets. I can get your food. He goes, what? I hadn't thought about that. So where are your resources? God has got the resource for you. I'm not saying don't prepare. I'm just saying we don't have to look for the miracles to supply our needs. Oh, it's great to have them, and I'd like to see one every day. But if that's all we're going to have, we're going to be, of men, most miserable. Because that's all we're going to be looking for, and when it's not there, it's not going to happen. I mean, we're going to think about old Naaman. I mean, we're in the same territory right here with old Naaman. When he comes to the prophet, he says, well, how can I get healed of my lepers? He said, well, go right down here, just closest, it's the closest place, and dip yourself 7 times. He said, I would have done it if he'd asked me to do some big old thing. Man, I'm for the little stuff. I mean, I'd rather have said, hey, let me splash some water on you. He said, I do the least hard thing. I'm a little on the lazy side. So I don't know what his problem is that. But here, he opened this boy's eyes, opened his eyes, and blinded him. Think about that. That's 2 phrases right there close together. Both of them got to do with sight. Now, I believe faith is important. Who read the scripture this morning? Andy? About faith, correct? Yeah. I believe we should live by faith, but you see, I think there's a little bit of curve about that to us. Because the longer you're saved and the longer you've seen God work, even in the small stuff, your faith is going to be sight because, I don't see it, but I know what's going to happen. I know what's going to happen. You just, sometimes you could just know what's going to happen. You like the 2 fellas that went to the old movie a long time ago, and Lone Ranger was on there, and he says, I bet you the Lone Ranger's going to ride under a tree and get knocked off. He said, I bet you a bag of popcorn. He said, you own it. You won't have to. Sure enough, it happened to him. So he says, well, come on, I'll get you popcorn. He said, no, I'm not going to take it. I got to confess to you, I came yesterday and saw this movie. I knew it was going to happen. He said, well, no, he said, we're going to go through with it because I saw the movie too, and I just didn't think he was dumb enough to do it twice. So, but you see, if we've seen it before, we know what's going to happen. So our faith becomes sight somewhat. So What are you looking for today? A miracle? Or the money ain't? And Brooke, it just keeps coming on by. Just keeps coming on by. When Uncle Sam decided they was getting rid of all us guys that were getting older, they offered us a buyout and says, well, y'all can retire now, but you're going to have a penalty because of your age. Not going to be enough to live on. People said, can you live on what you draw from your retirement? Sure, Marie can. Just love stuff. But we prayed about it. You see, I had a pretty constant income. Now, I did some things to change that a little bit here and there to make more. But we've been pretty much at check, being either at the bank or when it came to direct deposit at a certain time. So all of a sudden, I'm going to start working. You fellas, Brother Eddie, it makes a difference when it's on you and not so-and-so sends you a check. And sometimes there's some, like, Lord, I think you've told me you're going to provide for me, but sometimes it seems like it runs in a slump. Elijah didn't run through everything on top of the mountain. But all the while, God was preparing a raven, or he was letting that water run right on down. So whether it's a miracle or whether it's that water just it's coming flowing down off that mountain, it's on the way. It's on the way. I think sometimes our prayers, if we pray, we say, Lord, I'm about to give up. It's on the way. So you're not hardly ready. Brother Dukney, which was a missionary to Trinidad, he was born in India. He was born in Trinidad and then went to India as a young man. Indian guy, one of Billy Driscoll's favorite guys out of anybody, but I spent the night at his house in Trinidad. And he was a super teacher. I could use some stuff of his and not even have to write notes, but he used to tell me, he said, you know, we're like a cake. We're in the oven. And we say to the chef, let me out, it's hot. I can't stand the heat no more. Hold on just a little longer, because when the timer goes off, you're going to be sweet. Everybody's going to love you. You're going to be exactly as desired. Exactly as desired. See, God's got a plan. We don't think He does. I use this illustration, guys, in jail all the time, and I probably use it here because it ain't nothing new, no way, so why not worry about it? We watched Andy Griffith show so many times that Marie gets aggravated at me saying the whole dialogue and saying it all the way through. Because we've seen it so many times. So if I give you something over here that you heard before, don't get too aggravated because you've watched some of those episodes more than once. But I chainsaw carve, and I never have put a chain to a log unless between these ears and this little small brain there's an idea of what I want it to be. Now sometimes, not that often, but sometimes I'll run into a knot, a hollow place that just doesn't lend itself to me, and I'll have to end up making it something else. Of course, there's some illustrations in God's Word about that being the potter. But God is putting sometimes things to us. Not a chainsaw, maybe not the heat in an oven, but sometimes a little pressure. But it's to get us where we need to be. Preacher, I'm not good at invitations, so you come on up and if one's needed or whatever.
Well, how many of you got something?